We are witnessing one of the biggest shifts in work that we have seen in the last century. We live in a post-internet world where the boundaries between work and home are less distinct. And what this means is work itself is more precarious. Wages are, for the most part, stagnant. Automation is expanding and it's becoming more sophisticated. And as a result, entire professions are disappearing. And the next new shock to the economy is just on the horizon, even if we can't see it. And so, as a result, the prescriptive, disciplinary, and specialized training or education that has worked well for most of the 20th century won't be enough to ensure our success in the 21st century. She argues that we need a much more active learning practice that builds on 21st century skills. But what should be changed? And how should it be changed in practice, in the classroom? So what I'd like to do is take you through a journey of my interviews with thought leaders from around the world to hear what they have to share from their own experience and classroom practice. But before I do that, let me share a little bit about myself. So I worked for Smart Technologies for about 10 years, where I was the primary inventor of the first multi-touch product, table product for education, the Smart Table. And now I am working as the Director of Education Strategy for New EdTech. And so I've been very passionate about multi-touch and its potential for a long time. I also run a YouTube channel called Ed on EdTech. And what you'll find is a lot of the content that I'm referring to in this talk, you can just go onto YouTube and you can watch those interviews directly. So if you ever need any content or materials of what the experts in the world are saying, go onto YouTube, search Ed on EdTech, and you will find those. Subscribe, like. So I focus a lot on video. And the reason I focus most of my content is in video format is because I find video just fascinating. You know, the biggest educators on the planet aren't teaching in a classroom. Right? They're people who are sharing videos, say on YouTube, that could get, say, 1 million views per video. That's bigger than any classroom. So many people are taking the traditional hour-long lecture and they're compressing it to maybe just a few minutes using simple techniques of editing and graphics, inclusion of graphics or animated graphics. And so as a result, many teachers have moved to a flipped classroom style of teaching where they do the lecturing or watching the videos at home and they do the creative, the collaborative type tasks in the classroom. And so I had the pleasure of going and attending the VidCon conference, which is the biggest YouTube conference in the world. And in this image, you actually see some images of YouTube engineers who told us that, in fact, YouTube itself gets 500 million views of educational videos every single day. It's actually the third most popular reason why people go to the site at all. And anybody who's used YouTube, for learning knows that you can learn pretty much anything on YouTube. I developed my own unfinished basement using videos from YouTube. I fixed my car using YouTube videos. I was able to select the right stroller for my child using YouTube video reviews. But there's a catch. The catch is that studies have shown that we need to put these ideas or these learnings into practice in order to retain what we watch. Otherwise, we feel that we're very confident, we understand, but if we actually try it out in practice, we find that, oh, actually there's lots of gaps in our understanding. So how do we do this? How do we put this all into practice? That's where we really needed to rely on our interviews with the thought leaders from around the world. And what we found in our interviews, by interviewing dozens of thought leaders from around the world, was that there's a general trend. And that trend is education is moving from standardization to personalization. From the standardized, one-size-fits-all model, sage on the stage type approach, which leaves many students behind, to a much more personalized approach, where students are creating content that fits their own personal expressive style. So one great example is Richard Wells. He's the author of The Learner's Paradise, How New Zealand is Rethinking Education. Actually, what's interesting is he is originally a teacher right here from the UK. He moved to New Zealand, where schools are replacing standardized tests with project-based learning. And one of the things he says is that really students, they'll gain success in different ways. So that differentiation really comes into play. And he talks about how it's that creation. It's those projects that are really connected to the students' interests that are really what's driving the success of education in New Zealand. And also, there is Eric Scheninger, who's the author of Brand Ed, or the use of branding in education. And he says that learning, again, is not a straight line. It's a very convoluted process. And so many young, like if you think about many of the young Generation Z students, so this is born year 2000 or younger, they're actually quite interested in building their own brand, right? They're interested. A great example I have is, I have a cousin who's, I think, 10 years old, and I asked him, well, what do you want to do when you grow up? And he comes and says to me, well, I want to be a YouTuber. Like, nobody would have said that 5 years ago, that was their career path. A lot of people are thinking that now. In fact, among the Gen Z generation, I learned from the YouTube engineers, many of the top 10 celebrities are in fact YouTubers. So if you don't know who Jake Paul is, or if you don't know who Rice Gum is, it could be very difficult to have a conversation with somebody in that generation. The YouTubers are very different from your traditional celebrities in that instead of just seeing the positive things about that individual, you're also seeing the negative. You're seeing much more video, much more content, much more detail. So it's a different type of celebrity, and it's something that many, many students are getting interested in. And lastly, I'll also point to ditch that textbook author, Matt Miller. And I really like his interview, where he says, we have the potential to do so much more these days than just march chapter by chapter through a textbook. And he's really, in this case, talking about the passive side of teaching. Really, he's saying, the sage on the stage type metaphor, running, chapter by chapter through that textbook, it's leaving a lot of students behind. They're not getting motivated by this. Many of these influencers saw that technology was a tool. So it's a tool that can help enable equity, and it can also help develop a sense of self. So one person, so Matthew Lynch, who is the creator of The Advocate and The Tech Advocate, he is a professor from Mississippi in the United States. He really argues that technology is in the unique position to help with education equity. And what does he mean by that? Well, he talked a little bit about, in the United States, there's E-rate funding. So it means that people can get tablets for a little bit less cost than, say, a consumer would get to buy it. And he's saying, using this type of funding, it is possible to get all the curriculum that that you need for a particular semester for less cost than it costs to buy the paper textbook. So as a result, you can get all the curriculum that is available in the textbook, plus you can have some of the interactivity possibilities using technology. So this technology is actually making education just more accessible, right? You're able to do more with a lot less money. And another quote from Richard Wells from New Zealand is that the focus of the 21st century system in education has got to be on developing a sense of self. And here, when he says a sense of self, he's really referring to creativity that I was talking about before. Because let's look at creativity, right? What is creativity? What do we mean when we say the word creativity? Well, I think what he's referring to, what Richard Wells is referring to here, is that creativity is a form of self-expression. There are many different forms of creativity. It could be an art class. It could be a dance class that you go to. It could be music. There are many different forms of self-expression. And when you discover the form of self-expression that really motivates you, then it's very closely related to intrinsic motivation. That is, once you discover it, you're going to want to create a lot more content on here. People won't be able to stop you from learning. It's that passion that you see. The way I argue is, well, it has a lot to, let's just look at, say, the App Store, right? So if we open up, the standard App Store, you see these apps: YouTube, Instagram, Messenger, Snapchat, Facebook. Why? Why are these apps always on the top? What is it? What is the commonality? What is the common theme among all of these apps that causes them to be so highly rated or highly downloaded? We believe it has a lot to do with creativity and another aspect: pride. So pride is really important. It has to do with, what are you proud of? It's not that activities like Minecraft are the most amazing graphic subsystem out there, but they allow you to create something that you're proud of. They allow you to create something that you want to share with others online. And I think that's the really key aspect. In the same way, Instagram allows you to create and share stories of travels, of where you've been, and the kinds of activities that you've done through pictures and videos. So this type of storytelling made really easy. It's another form of self-expression. In the same way, YouTube videos are a very powerful way to express things that you're proud of. Maybe this interview with Barack Obama, for example. So the question remains, what if we could channel that same creativity into an energy, into what people are learning, into their education? Right? We wanted to create, what if we could create homework that you would want to do at home? Right? Something that you would be motivated to not only do, but you want to share with others. So many of the influencers that we spoke with, they argued that the sage on the stage style of teaching leaves many students behind, and that we learn a lot more when we create than when we listen. And so let's give that a try right now. I'm going to open up the Snowflake software, and let's see if I can do a little bit of creation and demonstration. This is a really simple habitat type example. When you load it, you just move the labels into the correct location. So I'll move it in here. Okay, so ocean and polar. And then once you get them in the right spot, you get feedback. And so really, really simple educational activities. But one of the things that we can do with the Snowflake suite is also split the screen into multiple zones. And what this does is it's the equivalent of taking one display and turning it into like 4 iPads, where people can work completely independently. So you can have one activity for the habitats, you can have a geography example here. Maybe I'll load math bugs, just a little simple math activity. here, and then I'm going to download media in this example. So you have 4 people who are able to interact completely independently. And with this example, the key aspect here is that each one of these activities, fully allows you to leverage like multi-touch capabilities of the display. So you can actually use all of the different touches, which is very important when it comes to simultaneous personalized learning. It means that not everybody needs to follow the single display. And that's something that we often say is when you have the software, you're not stuck to the sage on the stage type of learning. You can actually use this in by multiple people. And if let's pretend this display was put in a horizontal tabletop format, you can also push a button and you can rotate the window 180 degrees so that it's upright for the person on the opposite side of that display. So that's some of the power of this particular approach. But all of the lessons that you see here, like I talked a little bit about creation before, think of all the educational apps that we have here as templates. And these templates can be fully customized using your mobile device. And this is something that's very unique to our software. So in here, you can see a number of activities just on a mobile phone. And the reason that this is really unique is because there's that creation on mobile allows you to use the images from your camera roll. It allows you to capture video directly from your camera roll and use that inside the lesson activity. So what I did, for example, is I would take a Facebook augmented reality video, where they have little costumes. I save that as a video in my camera roll, and then I can put it into my lesson. Or I have a recording of my voice, and I want to use that as part of a card lesson, right? So all of those are possibilities. We have so many lessons, it's really hard to describe them all. So what we use is this metaphor of a pocket. So pair, order, choice, keyword, engagement, and tools. So thank you guys very much.